The first thing we're going to do is, so this piece that you're looking at right here is, you can see this was a photo of grapes that I was allowed to use from a lovely photographer friend. And this right here is the grapes that I emulated from this picture. So in here, I'm going to try to go slow because I'm on a little bit of a delay. You can see that this is all of these grapes, if I pull up the layers, are individually done. If I remove the layers, then you can see that they go away. So I'm just gonna real quick play a quick video for you where you can see how this kind of came together, like the order of them. So this is gonna run. Okay. All right, can you guys see that? It's coming up slowly. All right, so you can see that first thing I did was I tried tracing them entirely and colorizing that area. So you can see that they're kind of one big group. That's one layer. And I'm adding shadows to round them out.
How do you trace something, Jennifer? You're not hand tracing it, are you? Is it a part of the app?
So in that, the way that I did it was I did hand trace them. I just, in this example, I'm gonna come back. This is one way to do it, where I picked up a brush and I literally just sat there and, colored over it.
Okay.
Like I used the select tool to create the outline, but then I just colored in that area.
Okay. And the select tool is the hand picture, right?
It's yes.
It's like a little pointing finger.
Yeah. So I'm going to come back to this in a second. So I'm going to walk you through this. So this is just what I'm showing right now is just kind of a synopsis of how we got to where we are. So this is one way to do it. I'm going to let this run a little further. I'm going to narrate. So now I'm adding highlights and lowlights, and this is all just done with the brush, but these are one big group. Those grapes are not individual. So now you can see that in this section, it went a little faster than I wanted to. Then another way to do it, which is what I want to work on today, is using the layers. So you'll see that it'll come up as, there's a little bit of a delay on the camera, but you hopefully we'll see in a second. See, they're all individual shapes. And they're, can you guys see that, or is the video going like really, really fast?
No, we can see it.
You can see it? Okay. All right. So what I did there was I created these individual shapes on individual layers. And then I added alpha locks so that each one of them, you can only draw over the shape that you've already done. So that, and then I was able to layer them in space. So the grapes in the back are the lowest layer, the grapes in the front are the top layer, so that they're acting like physical objects in space instead of one layer of grapes that are all on the same plane. So that was using the layers, using alpha lock. And I'll also show you how I got to these different colors. I was using the eyedropper tool on my reference photo to pick up those particular colors and place them on the grapes where my reference said to put them. So, and then on another layer, I added the stems, and then just a couple more details. And then on the background layer, then I added shadows and colors. And this image is just a rough sketch. But you can see how you can, you could potentially really do a lot more with that. So once this is done, we're gonna basically run through the process together of doing that. So if everybody is ready, let's all go to Procreate. I'm gonna close out all of my things here. Okay. Okay. All right. So just a refresher, if you're in the home gallery, I'll wait for my video to catch up. I apologize for these yellow things on the screen right here. If you see them, I don't know how they got there. I don't see them on my phone, but I know that they came from my phone. So I apologize for the spaghetti on the thing. But
Okay.
if you're making a new image, you go up in this top right corner here, and you go to that little plus sign, and you go ahead and tap that. And it's going to ask you what size you want to be doing. For the purposes of this, let's do screen size, which will be, the dimensions are going to be, the very top one will say screen size. And it's let me darken this a little bit so that maybe you can see that better. So depending on what the dimensions of your iPad are, they're going to be, the numbers are going to be a little different. Mine are about 2000 by 1500 pixels. If you have a much bigger iPad, the numbers are going to be higher. If you have a much smaller iPad, then the numbers will be a little smaller.
Jennifer, this is Susan. I'm in Procreate, but I can no longer see the Zoom. How do I do that? I'm on an iPad.
If you're in Procreate and watching the Zoom at the same time, I'm not sure if you're going to be able to do a side by side. I haven't found a way to do that. But I will try. What I'll try to do is I'll try to really describe where I'm going in space on the program so that you can find it without me just saying, look here. I'll try to describe where it is. Hopefully.
Otherwise, I can log into Zoom on my laptop. So if it's too much overhead, let me know.
Okay. If you can, then you might get more out of it. But I will try to be descriptive about where I am in space. Okay. So if you tap on that artwork that you created, you're going to have a background that's totally white. And the first thing that we're going to do here, I'll do this. I'll do a new one as well. So the first thing that you're going to do is create a new layer. So go into your layers, which is the top right corner. And you see layer 1. So that's fine. We're going to be on that. So in order to make these ellipses that we did for the grapes, so we're just going to be making a series of circles in space right now. Go up in the top left-hand corner to the selection tool, which looks a little bit like a ribbon, like a squiggly S ribbon. And it'll come up with these options down at the bottom. Now you see the color fill tool on the bottom right-hand side has a little paint bucket. You do want that to be blue. You want that to be highlighted. Now, before you draw, let's take a quick look at the color picker in the top right-hand corner. When you create an object with color fill highlighted, it will fill it with whatever this color is in the corner. So if you're not happy with that color, it doesn't really matter for our purposes here. You can pick whatever color you want. I've got a pink going right now. And now you're going to go to your page and you're just going to draw an ellipse. So drag and you see how you move it in space, and it'll be wider, it'll be taller, it'll be fatter, it'll be smaller, etc. So you just make a circle or an ellipse, whatever you feel like doing. And then tap that again to get out of it.
Oops.
Okay. I'm sorry, tap the little ribbon, the selection tool. Tap that to deselect.
Uh-oh.
Okay.
No, it didn't work. Oh.
If you're having trouble getting out of the deselect tool, tap on the arrow, which is the like the grabber tool, the selection tool. I'm sorry, the transform. It's called a transform tool. The thing that looks like an arrow in the top left corner.
Jennifer, do you mind letting me into the room, because I've logged on my laptop, so
Yep.
I can see. Thank you.
There you are.
And color fill red.
Okay.
So how did you fill after, I made the circle and my Apple Pen isn't working, so I just used my finger. So I've got those little ants, like little dots that are, my ellipse is kind of moving.
Yep.
And then how do I fill the color?
So before you create the ellipse,
Oh,
you go in the lower right-hand corner and
right.
you'll see a little paint bucket. And
Yeah.
it says color fill. Make
That's
sure,
on.
make sure that's blue. Okay.
Yep.
So now check your color in the top right-hand corner.
Right.
If the color is white, you won't see it because it'll be
Right.
the same color as your screen.
Yeah, it's pink. I mean, it's red. Yeah.
It's red. Okay.
Yeah.
So you might have to just kind of get out and of that section and try again. It's possible that you added the color fill option after you did the selection.
Oh,
So sometimes it doesn't quite respond the way
okay.
that you want.
My
Okay.
version doesn't have a paint bucket.
Ugh.
Interesting.
Am I on an old version? I mean, I just downloaded it.
I'm not sure. Do you see anything else that says color fill?
I see save and load.
Save and load. Is it possible? Are you looking at yours vertically or horizontally?
Vertically.
What if you rotate your iPad so that you're looking at it horizontally?
Oh, I mean, I'm sorry, I'm horizontal. I'm like you. I'm oriented as you are.
Weird.
That is a little strange. I'm not familiar with.
That's weird.
It is weird. All right. Well, you know what you could do is you're gonna be able to kind of do the same thing. Another way to create a circle. Let's go in the top right hand corner to layers.
Sorry to interrupt. So
That's okay.
I still have the ants, and somehow now my background, the circle is white, but the background is the red. So what did I do?
Okay. So what I think you did is I think that your invert, you may have accidentally inverted your selection. So under the selection tool in the lower left-hand corner, there's a word invert. It looks like a little square with a triangle above and below. You want that to be off. It's possible that you hit that or it was selected, restarted.
off. It
Okay.
is off. Yeah, I haven't touched it.
Okay,
Okay.
maybe tap it and you can do the undo button. So if you get out of selection, and you go over here to the lower left-hand corner, there's a
yes.
little arrow.
Uh-huh.
You can just hit that and it'll undo what you did. If you're not happy with that, then that's fine.
Well, I just want to know how to do what you did.
Yeah. No, but I think we'll work it out. I think that as you're we're going to practice this a couple of different layers. So, all right.
No, but I can't even select a color. I'm in the color wheel and I've picked a color and it's not changing. Doing something wrong?
So you're in the color wheel.
Nope.
Are you, okay, one question. Are you sure that your Apple Pencil is charged?
Yeah,
Okay.
it was where I was able to draw an ellipse.
Okay.
Just didn't color in.
Okay.
Right.
So let's try going to the color wheel. Maybe.
Is it okay to use your finger and not the Apple Pencil?
Yeah, I mean, you may or may not, and it won't be quite as fine, but yeah, absolutely. If you're having trouble with your Apple Pencil, that's what I was going to say, is you can switch to your finger for the purposes of this. That's
I
fine.
am.
Jennifer, can you refresh? I know it was in your video how you got that perfect circle. I thought it was when you draw and then you just keep the pencil there. Is that how it is?
Yes. So yes. So if you wanted a perfect ellipse, you draw it and then you hold it and it should come up with a perfect shape. You can do that. We'll do that in drawing too. We'll come back to that in a minute.
Okay, I figured it out. Okay.
All right, great. Yeah, we'll see it in when I use the drawing tool.
But I still have ants. I have the red now in the circle, but I have the moving ants. How do you solidify that?
So you go back up to the top left-hand corner and you tap the little ribbon selection tool again to get out of that mode.
Okay.
It should plant it and keep it on the screen.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Okay. So now we're going to go back to the top right-hand corner to layers. And we're going to add another layer. Okay, so we got layer 2. And now when you're working in layers, whatever layer is blue is the layer that you're working on. So we're going to work on layer 2. I'm going to select a different color. So go tap in the top right-hand corner, go to your color picker. This one I'm going to pick a gray. And this time I'm going to draw my shape instead. So I'm just going to go to sketching. It doesn't really matter too much.
All right, well,
Jennifer, do you
I'm
prefer-
gonna hang up because I can't get any color, so this is useless, but I really appreciate what you're trying to do. I'm sorry. It's not
Sorry,
working for me.
Diane.
Yeah,
All right, well, we'll have the video online. So if you wanted to refresh when you're able to get it working, then maybe you can check it out once you can get it. All right, sorry
well, I
about
just was
that.
trying to get the question answered and people kept interrupting, so it's a little bit rude, but thank you.
Okay, all right, so.
Jennifer, I was actually going to ask, do you want us to wait till the end of a segment to ask questions? I didn't really, I missed the first couple minutes when we were first on, so I don't know, the kind of classroom contract, as you'd say, like, how would you like to operate the class?
I think that for this first little part, since I think that everybody has a lot of questions, I don't want anybody feeling like they're left behind. So we can, let's try to space out your questions if possible, and I'll try to answer them as they come up. And then in a few minutes, we'll switch to blocks of, I'll go through several steps and then we'll take questions for a few minutes.
Just what happens to me with the color selection is I never know why it's suddenly 2 colors, and sometimes by accident, it's almost like they'll flip back and forth between each other. There's 2 colors at the top. It was just on your screen also that there were 2 colors. You said you were choosing a gray, but I could see 2 colors.
Right. Yeah. So this, you mean I've got the green and then I've got the gray here? Yeah. Honestly, I am not entirely certain, but I know that the left-hand one in my case is what I look at. But this color in the corner, the circle, is what color is actually going to be showing up. That the green on mine, the green is not what's going to be showing up. The blue circle. So when you're looking in your color picker, those 2 things right there, that's a really good question. I'm going to have to look into that myself. But the circle in the top right corner is identifying what the color is. So that little green one there is not the color that's going to show up. Does that make sense? Sort of.
It makes sense. When I was experimenting after watching your first video, it almost seemed like if I'm drawing over the first color, that second color is what will appear. And I almost think it's maybe the opposite. Is it finding the opposite on the color wheel possibly?
It's possible. Yeah.
But I didn't try to make it happen, and it just happened automatically. And I was wondering if we can turn off that setting, or how did that happen, kind of. But that's okay. Something we'll all have to explore together, I guess.
It certainly could be the complementary colors. Looking at this wheel here, they don't look exactly like where we're at. I'm gonna have to look into that, but I will, because now my interest is piqued, so I will look into that. All right, so we're on layer 2, and you're gonna pick up a brush. Let's go into airbrushing. Just these are pretty easy to work with. And pick up like a medium hard brush.
Where's airbrush?
Okay, it's under the brush library. You'll see calligraphy, painting, artistic, airbrushing.
Thank you.
Yep. And then just select one of the hard brushes. Okay, and now look to your slider on the left-hand side here. So larger, up is bigger, down is smaller. And then down here, opacity, it's more opaque is up, less opaque is down. So we'll do full opacity right now. and about a 5% brush. And we're just going to draw another shape. You can fill it in like this. Okay, because we're just working with layering right now. Okay. And now we're going to add one more layer. And so you guys with me? We're adding another layer. Okay. Now we're going to go back into the selection tool, that little ribbon.
You're going to pick a different color? Or...
Yep, exactly.
Okay.
You got it. You're ahead of me. So we're going to pick, this time I'm going to pick a dark red. Okay. And so we're going to do another ellipse. Okay. And the color fill was on. Okay.
It didn't fill again.
And
I'm sorry, when you're in the selection tool, do you go into freehand? Like I was in freehand, I made the ellipse. Color fill is lit, blue. I selected the color.
So if you go to the ellipse option in the in that section instead of freehand.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
This is pushing it.
There we go. Okay.
All right.
Why is that as opposed to freehand? Like
you can do freehand. We're gonna do another layer, and we're gonna do a freehand item next.
Okay.
For this ellipse that you just drew, I just want you guys to go to the feather option about in the center on the bottom, and just play with that a little bit. Just kind of pull the slider to the right, and you're gonna see it basically disappears once you hit 40–50%. So let's put it at around like 10%. Okay. This is just so that you guys can see in action what's going on. We're not going to be making a cohesive piece right now, which is fine.
Is that what you use for your highlights on the grapes, for example? Is that when you'd use feather?
I would use feather if I was trying to draw something that I wanted to have a softened approach.
Yeah.
In a moment, I'm going to show you how I did the coloring on the grapes. Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. So now that you've got a feathered shape, let's tap on the selection tool again to get out of it. So you got those 3 shapes in space. You got your 3 layers.
Yes.
So now we're just going to practice. Tap on layer 2 and hold your finger down and drag it up top so that it becomes the top layer. And you see how with the different order, how they change in space. All right. So now we're going to drag, do the same thing, just one more practice. Grab layer 1, hold on to it, drag it all the way to the top, and release. So now you've got layer 1 and layer 2 on top of layer 3, so that 3rd shape, that feathered shape that you drew, should be the bottom one, should be behind the others. Before it was on top, but now it's behind.
Cool. Yeah.
All right. So now we're going to work with layer 1. So tap on your highlighted blue layer 1, and you're going to see this menu come up alongside it. And you should see about halfway down a phrase alpha lock.
How do you get that menu to come up?
Sure, you just tap right around next to not on the name of the layer, not on the words layer 1, because that'll ask, sometimes it might ask you to change the name of the layer. But if you just tap on the layer, it'll come up to the left. You got it?
Yeah.
Okay, so tap on the word alpha lock.
Alpha, okay.
Okay. All right. So now we're going to draw on this, on that circle or that ellipse. So let's pick up, go to your brush library and pick something that's got more texture to it. Let's go with, where is it? Let's go with charcoals. and just pick up any of them, really. I'm going with 6B compressed, but as long as it's not a flat, you know, something too soft, the particulars don't matter. And then we're going to go in the top right-hand corner again. And just pick another color, something that contrasts with your first color. So I'm going to go with a teal here. And now I'm going to draw on my ellipse on that layer. And you see how it's not, even though I'm going, my Apple Pencil is going beyond the shape, it's only drawing on the shape. So when I did the grapes, that's how I got the shadows and the highlights, was I did exactly that. So if I was, you know, the way that I did it was, so I played with the opacity a little bit. And
Is that because you did the alpha lock?
Yep, because I did alpha lock, it's not going beyond the parameters.
And I'm sorry, I missed that. Where is the alpha lock again? Just
You
quickly.
go into the layer section, top right
Right.
corner,
Uh-huh,
and you tap on the layer that you wanna lock down.
uh-huh. Just
And
tap
it'll-
them?
Yep, tap on the layer, and
Okay.
you'll see that menu pop up to the left-hand side of it.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Uh-huh.
All right, great. Sorry. Mhm.
No, don't be sorry.
Mhm.
All right, great. So once you've drawn on that thing and you see the alpha lock, how it works, how it keeps your drawing on that on the confines of that layer. Let's go to layer 2. Okay, so it should be the other one that's kind of on top. And now we're going to go into the color picker wheel. Oh, I'm sorry. Before you go into the color picker wheel, so you should be on layer 2. We're going to do eyedropper tool. So tap on that second layer, on that shape. So in my case, it's the blue circle that I hand drew, and it should create it. As you hold it down, you'll see the color in your eyedropper in the top right corner will adjust to the color that we already did on that layer.
Oh, okay. I
So
lost.
this is really useful if you have something that you wanted to just give some shape and texture to, so that you can pick up the actual color and then you can add shadows that are in the same family. So we're going to do that right now. Okay.
Can you just show one more time? I'm sorry. The
Absolutely.
eyedropper tool. So I'm in layer 2.
So you're on layer 2. So
Yep.
you're going to tap and hold on that object that's in layer 2.
Okay.
Okay. And while you're holding, you should see the color eyedropper in the top right-hand corner. You should see that color pop up as whatever color you picked. So in my case, it's the steely blue color.
Okay. Yeah. And I also see like a round ring. Is that?
Yep.
Like, okay.
So
Okay.
yep, but we'll get to that in 1 second.
Okay.
Okay, so now you're on layer 2. You've got your color picked. So now tap on the color picker, and you see that. So we're not going to do the outside ring. We're going to go down to the bottom right-hand corner. You see a slider that says value.
Yeah.
Okay, tap on value. So now on value, you're going to see all of these sliders. So they stand for hue, saturation, brightness and contrast, and then RGB. We're going to go to the B, the third one down, which stands for brightness and contrast. And we're going to just slide that down somewhat so that whatever color you have. So my blue is getting darker.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Okay. And now I'm going to use the same brush just for now. And again, I'm going to draw on this. Now you see, I didn't alpha lock this. So what's happening?
It's
Outside.
going outside the
Going
line.
outside of it.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yep. So there are going to be cases where you don't want alpha lock on. You want to be kind of bleeding outside of your original drawing, but there are going to be times where you want it to look like a really crisp, clean line. And so that's where alpha lock is helpful. So now let's stay on that same layer. Go ahead and feel free to play around with the size of your brush and the opacity. And just kind of, sketch that in as if it were a shape in space.
And the harder you push, the darker it gets. too.
Exactly. Yep. And also the other thing is the angle of your pencil will
Oh, okay.
also affect the way that your brush interacts. This is more or less significant depending on what brush you have picked up. Some brushes, it doesn't affect it very much, and some of it, it's really dramatic. If your pencil is more straight up and down from your screen, more vertical, it's going to be a thinner line. And if you tip it to the side, then you'll get a much broader, more gentle stroke. Imagine you're using a charcoal and you know, or a pencil, let's go with it, you know, like a pencil, you have it straight up and down, you're gonna have a nice thin line, whatever your pencil point is. And when you turn it to the side to do shading, you get more of a, you know, more of a brushy kind of look. So it's the same thing with this, but certain brushes are more susceptible to that than others. And they're always going to be limited by whatever your sliders over on the left-hand side are telling it to do. Okay, so that's for fine nuance, but you're not going to be able to make it gigantic by turning it on a side if you've got your slider all the way down. Okay, so now while we're on layer 2, go back to your color picker wheel. I'm sorry, the color picker value box. Okay, and now this time we're going to go and take the B, and you're going to bump it up to about halfway. And then whatever color you want to play with. If you want to make, in my case, I'm going to make it more pink. So I'm going to take the R slider for R as in RGB. I'm going to slide it more pink. So just play with that. Pick another color that you like. Just trying to get you guys familiar with where these things are. And now I'm going to, just for review, gonna go back into layers, tap on layer 2, and hit alpha lock. Okay, so we're getting a little more practice on this. And now go into your brush and let's change it to another texture. Let's go into textures, pick something wild and crazy. I'm gonna go with diagonals. And then I'm gonna add that on there. Okay, so you see that the shape that you drew, now it has some shadow and it's got this crazy texture over top of it.
Oh, that's cool.
Isn't that fun?
Yeah.
All right, so now one more thing that we're gonna do is we're gonna go back into layer 2. Okay. We're going to remove alpha lock. So to remove alpha lock, you just tap the word alpha lock again. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So now while you got it highlighted and you have your layer view here, tap on the N. This is going to bring up all the different modes. First, I want you to drag the opacity all the way down and see what happens. By the way, if you're having trouble seeing it because it's underneath your layers, you can grab the whole palette, the whole thing with 2 fingers and move this around in space. So you can, with 2 fingers, you can pinch out, you can move your fingers apart to get closer. So I'm going to move it a little bit to the left so that the menu won't cover it up. You can see.
Okay, I was trying to move the menu the other.
All right.
Wait, Jennifer, can there be a problem when you move your screen? I think you mentioned this in your video, that then somehow you lose part of your image.
Yeah, so that's when you're moving the entire canvas like this with 2 fingers, that's not when this happens. It's when you use the transform tool and you transform at one of your objects beyond the confines of this canvas. So it automatic, so as to not have too much data saved, I think, to make sure that the program moves fast, it crops whatever goes off of the canvas.
Gotcha. Okay. And then what's the difference? Can you just go over quickly again, or not quickly? What's the difference between alpha lock and then the regular, like there's a lock for the whole layer, right?
Yep. So the lock for the entire layer, if you go into layer 2 and you swipe to the right, the word lock will make it so you can't do anything to this layer at all. You can't move it, you can't add anything to it, you can't erase it. So if you have a layer that you're really, really happy with and you don't want to accidentally draw on it or, you know, mess with it, that's a good way to lock the whole layer down.
Okay. And alpha lock just means you can't go beyond the object that you've drawn.
Correct.
Is that what alpha lock is?
Alpha lock means it will only add more color or texture. It will only affect the pixels that you've already drawn on.
Okay.
So I'm going to show you a little bit. 1 second, I'll come back to alpha lock.
And I just couldn't find opacity. How did you pull down opacity for a layer?
So
again?
in the layer, you tap the letter N.
N.
Yep. And it's the top, before you get to to all the different selectables, there's the word opacity, there's a blue slider.
Okay, yeah.
Say opacity and max. So if you hold that little dot and slide it to the left, you're going to see your object slowly disappearing.
Okay, great.
Your
Thank
layer 2 object. Yep. Okay. So let's leave that at, whatever opacity you want. It can be, it doesn't really matter right now. Let's do it at full opacity. Now we're going to go up into the move and transform tool. Okay, so we're still on layer 2. So up here in the top left-hand corner, you want the little arrow. So you're going to tap that, and it should show you your a bounding box around your layer 2 item. So the first thing I want you to highlight before you start moving this around is uniform. You're going to drag this. You can either do this with your finger or with your pencil. I prefer to use my finger, but it's up to you.
Wait, could I ask a question? I'm sorry to interrupt. When I went into transform and I went into transform, it made a box around all 3 of my objects.
Okay.
Instead of just layer 2.
So go into your layers.
Right.
Okay. And make sure that only one of your layers is blue.
Oh, somehow all 3 of my, all right.
Okay. It's okay. So this is how you make them not blue. So
yeah.
You take the layer and you drag it to the left. And so if you've got, so I've got 2 highlighted here now.
Yeah.
So the one that I don't want to be highlighted, I'm just going to put my finger on it. I'm going to drag it to the right.
Go to the right.
Yep. So instead of seeing the lock duplicate and delete thing, instead it just kind of looks like it's going off the page. And then when I release, it should deselect that.
Yeah. Okay. I guess. All right. Whatever.
Okay. You can. I mean, you can. You could get out. You could just try tapping on a different layer. Also.
Yeah. I lost. It seems like all 3 of my layers became layer 2, and I don't know why or what I did, but.
Okay. It's possible that you grouped your layers together somehow.
Yeah, by accident.
We'll come back to it in a minute. It's okay that they're one layer.
Okay.
All right. So we're going to go into back into layer 2. And you see all of your below the opacity slider. You see all these options. The way that you pan through these is you just slide up or down, and it's going to change the way that the different layers interact with the layers below it. So for who was it that was asking? I'm sorry, I can't tell everybody's name, but for if you ended up with one giant layer, you may not see this effect so dramatically, but if you watch what's happening on my screen, you'll be able to see.
Okay.
So if I go into color burn, you see that it is only interacting with the layer below it because of the properties of that particular style. All right. If I go into darker color, it changes the colors. If I go into lighten, it changes it again. Down at the bottom, there's some that will make things look really dramatically different. Like difference will actually change the color of your layer. You got exclusion, subtract. So these do all sorts of different things. They all have their own properties. But the point is that you can change the look of any given layer and how it interacts with the layers above and below it just by using this slider. And if you want that to be the entire thing to be less, more or less dramatic, you can use the opacity tool. All right.
What's the default one? Oh, normal.
Yep. Normal is the default one. Now, what I don't know why normal is not at the top. I mean, I would imagine that normal should be the very first one you see, but
Oh, it's there.
it's not. So it's not at the top. It's about, seven options down.
Okay, so I kind of went backwards and found my layer. So again, how did you get to the burn again? Where'd you find the burn?
So you tap on the letter N.
Oh,
And then you just move your finger, you tap your finger on that selection area and you just slide up or down and it'll put you in those different modes.
yeah, it's not. Oh, yeah. Oh, it's like, okay, there it is. I see it.
Got it?
Yeah, so it's linear burn. Is that the?
You could, yeah. I mean, we're just seeing that they do different things. So you're just seeing that they interact in different ways. So, vivid light versus difference are going to be very different treatments of your layer.
I see.
Okay.
Jennifer, is that dependent on the brush or the tool that you've drawn with or anything, or is it the same formula throughout?
They tend to do roughly the same effect, but depending on what the texture is, what the colors are, and what's above and below it, it's gonna be different. So if you were to do this exact same exercise, but instead of my shapes being pink and blue, they started out green and yellow, my difference is not going to always make it green and pink. They're going to make it different colors. So it's they move your normal away from where it was by specified by unique specifications, like it's going to change the hue X%, it's going to brighten it, it's going to make it more saturated or less saturated. But depending on what the colors are, the textures are, and how many layers and what the interactions are, you're going to see a very different presentation. Okay. So you can put it back on normal or you can leave it. Let's go into the, let's go on layer 3. Okay, so our little feathered thing in the background there. And now we're going to, while you've got layer 3 highlighted, let's go into the top left corner for the arrow, go to the transform tool. Okay. And I want you guys to go into the uniform section. All right. And then, like I said, I like to use a finger, but you can use your Apple Pencil if you want. Grab one of the corners. I'm going to start with the top right, and I'm just going to pull this away, and you're going to see that it's going to make it bigger. You guys all see that? Mm-hmm. Okay. Now, if you tap right in the center of it, you can, and hold, you can move it around your page. Okay. So you can move it. Let's move it out from behind them so you can see it on its own.
And you could twist it too with your finger.
Yeah, so we're gonna, we're gonna play with it. Okay, so now let's go into distort. So you pick up that. And now when I drag one of these corners, you can see that the shape is going to change. Okay, so just kind of drag it. Now you got a trapezoidal shape. And it's no longer whatever ellipse you had. Now it's the shape that you got it in.
Oh, this is cool.
Isn't that fun?
Mm-hmm.
So now we're going to go into warp. Okay, so pull that up. And now just drag one of those quadrants and now start pulling that.
Oh, that's
and
really
just
cool.
see how that, and if you drag one of the corners, if you grab one of the corners and you pull it onto itself, you're going to literally see it folding like a piece of paper or like a piece of cloth. So it starts looking like a black hole is happening on your page.
Yeah.
Oh, that's really fun.
Isn't that cool?
Yeah, very.
So if you really liked the warp tool, you could go into advanced mesh in the bottom left-hand corner. And that gives you some more fine tuning of those things. So if you had an object in space that you wanted to have it lay just so over an object or interacting with the space. Okay, so let's tap uniform again. And then just hit the flip horizontal.
Where's uniform? Oh, uniform. Okay.
Yep, uniform slider, and then just hit flip horizontal a couple times so that you can see what it does.
Mhm.
And then flip vertical, just so you see. And then rotate 45 degrees does as you would expect. So it just rotates it around. Okay. And if you decided that this was all a fun experiment, but you wanted to go back the way it was, you go back into the bottom right-hand corner and you hit reset. And it puts it all the way back the way that it was.
Okay.
All right.
Can I ask then, is there a sort of step-by-step undo as opposed to a total reset?
Yeah, so with those, honestly, I haven't found a step-by-step undo of that. It tends to be like when you've got the marching ants going, it's treating that as one motion, like one movement or one action, even though you're doing several different things. The program only treats that as one action. So when if you try a little something, let's say again that I go into free form and I make the shape and I go, okay, that's pretty good. And I get out of it. So to get out of that, same as with the selection tool, with the transform, you tap the transform tool again. Okay. And you're like, okay, that's pretty good, but I could do it better. I want to go back. Now you can go into the bottom left-hand corner and undo from there. So it'll go back. So if you're not sure, pretty much what I'm saying is if you're not sure how you feel about it, you can do it in stages. Like you can do a transformation, get out of it, assess it, do another transformation, get out of it, assess it. And if you're like, I like where it's at, but I kind of like how it looked 2 transformations ago, then you would use the undo button to do that. I wish there was a way to, there might be, I just haven't found it yet.
So just to ask you a question, I got my 3 layers and 2 are overlapped. And let's say the one I just worked on that I did the transform. Let's say I want to move that second layer that I transform to overlap the other 2 shapes. How would you do that again?
Sure, you go into the top right corner and you open up layers.
Right.
So let's say that I want my bottom layer to now become the top layer. I tap on the bottom layer and I hold it with my finger. And then I physically drag it up to, you'll see it moving through. Now, I think what may have happened before is when you ended up with things all together, is you have to make sure that it drops either between or atop. If you drop on top of another layer, it'll group them together.
Okay.
So if you go all the way to the top and then let go, you'll see I still have 3 different layers.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm going to take this layer 2, hold it and bring it above layer 1.
Yeah.
But then it doesn't look any different. You know what I'm saying? So I just, it doesn't look, that layer isn't sitting on top of, like I haven't overlapped that shape on top of the other shapes.
Okay, so if they're not physically overlapping each other, then you might not be able to tell. If you wanted to move them so that you can physically see, you go to your transform tool. Okay, again, that's the arrow in the top left-hand corner. Okay.
Right.
And then you tap in the center of it, and you move that around in space, so that it's overlapping with the other objects.
I see. Okay.
Does that make sense? All right.
I see.
Okay. Let me see if there's anything else that I wrote. Okay. Real quick, we're getting close on time already. So I mean, we'll go a little longer because I think that since we've been doing questions throughout, instead of doing a dedicated 15 minutes of questions at the end, I think we'll just continue for another, 5-7 minutes, and then we'll do more questions at the end.
Sounds
Okay.
great.
All right. So the next thing that I want to show you is let's stay on layer 3. Okay. And let's go into the smudge tool up top, which is the little finger icon. Before we do that, actually go into layer 3 and transform the arrow and just drag it away from the others so that you can really see it. So it's not behind anything else.
Oh,
Okay. And now get out of the transform tool by deselecting it. And now in the smudge tool, go ahead and pick up something that's kind of a crazy texture. I'm going to go in the element section and go with crystals, but you can do anything that looks kind of fun to you.
that's fun.
Okay. And now let's go to the opacity slider on the bottom left and drag it all the way up. And put your brush size at about 50%. And then on that layer, you're just going to tap on the object and smudge out from center. And you see that it creates those crazy crystals. So tap and pull out. And you see that it gets more and more faint as it gets away from it. So pretty much what it's doing is it's taking the pigment, because it's digital, but it's taking the pigment and it's smudging it as far as it can in the shape that you're directing it to use. So if I were using, let's go into the smudge tool again, and let's pick up something a little more familiar. Go into charcoals, any charcoal there. Okay. And again, at least 50% and full opacity so you can really see what it's doing. And then just kind of smudge out. And you can, and just kind of play with this a little bit. And you can see how it blends that all together.
Does it have to be off alpha lock?
Yes. Yep. Make sure your alpha lock is off. Good catch. Thank you. And just kind of smudges around. Now you could do this on a layer with alpha lock, but the smudging will only happen within the confines of the area that you've already drawn on. So if we go back to just to test that, let's go to layer 1 and can stay on, make sure you got your smudge tool again. And now do that same thing on there. And now you can see that we've got a nice gentle, like mine, I've got an actual spherical shape. Okay. Everybody still with me? I'm seeing some excitement and concern on faces here all at the same time. All right. Okay. So let's go back to layer 3, the one that we smudged across. And this time go into the eraser tool, which looks kind of like a little rectangle up top, right? And bring those up. Let's get a real fun texture here. So go into vintage and go with either myrtle or campagna or honey eater. I'm going to go with myrtle. By the way, if you saw that when I tapped on it, it came up with all of these things in here. This is the brush studio. So if you really wanted, you could alter these. I have not done anything with this for the most part. I would recommend that if you wanted to play with this is personalizing the brushes, and a lot of people do this, but I would copy a brush before doing this. I'll show you that in a second. But this is because once you change it, it's sometimes a little hard to get back to the factory reset. So you might change it in a way that makes it unrecognizable as the brush that you were using in the first place. So this is kind of more of an advanced setting. So we're not going to do anything with this today. I'm just going to hit cancel. So I have Myrtle picked up and I've got my erase tool. I'm going to go
Amazing.
at about 50% size and full opacity. And I'm going to go over that shape, and you see that it gives it this fun texture where it's basically like it's cutting out the image that you've got there. So it's really giving it this crazy texture. And if you hit undo, let's go undo. And now take your slider and put it more, take your opacity way down to more like the 10%. And you do the exact same thing. You can see it just gives a little bit of a texture. So if this is really great for like organic elements, like, you know, somebody's face or somebody's shirt where you wanted to make it look like there was a cloth or a pattern going on. But you didn't want to have to add an entirely new layer. You can just you can texture something a little bit just by erasing it with low opacity. Okay.
Jennifer, if we by accident grouped layers, how do you ungroup them again?
Go to the undo button, lower left-hand corner.
Undo.
Yep. And just hit your the backwards arrow.
Lower left-hand corner. Okay. And then open layers, is that what it means to ungroup them? Open. Mine says something different. Yes. Below nothing pops up in my lower left-hand corner.
Just, I mean, not in the layer section, just in the program, under your opacity slider, there should be a little arrow that looks like a U-turn.
Okay.
Right down.
Oh, okay. Okay. A U-turn. You just keep going back and keep going back to when you did.
You can. I'm sure there is a way to, I haven't done a lot with grouped layers myself. I'm sure there is a way to ungroup layers.
I wish I didn't. I wish I also didn't group the layers. I don't know how
you know what, let me
I did the same thing.
You know what, let me see if I can figure this out right now.
And then when you delete the group, it's just like all gone really fast. Like the whole thing is gone.
Yep.
Let me see if I can figure it out, because I haven't dealt with merge down combine.
I thought, see, because when I went on group and I tried to delete the group, I just deleted my whole picture.
Right, got it. I'm gonna, you know what, that's a really good thing to know. So I'm gonna look into that, and I'll try to get an email out to you guys with a little info, because that's a very common mistake to make, is when you're trying to reorder your layers that you end up combining them. And so in my, I typically notice it right away, and then I go, oh crap, and I hit undo. So I haven't needed to belatedly unmerged layers, but I'm going to look into that. I'll try to get back to you.
Thank you.
Of course. All right, so the last thing that we're going to do is we're going to go back to layer number 1. Okay, and then we're going to go up into the top left-hand corner. It looks like a little magic wand. It's the adjustments tool. And we're going to go to we're going to do something simple first, then we're going to do something crazy. Okay, so first we're going to go into hue, saturation, and brightness. You're going to tap on the layer. Okay, you're going to see 3 sliders come up at the bottom. And I want you to just kind of play with those sliders. Just move them around. See how they affect that layer. So with the hue, it changes the colors entirely. With saturation, it makes them more saturated, less saturated. And the brightness obviously brightens it up to the point where it disappears, or darkens it to the point where it gets blacked out. Okay, so just kind of play around with that. And that that's the same for color balance, pretty much. The next thing is I want you to go into, so we're going to stay on the same layer, go into motion blur for layer, and just kind of slide your finger across. You see what I'm doing? like as I slide to the left, you're gonna see that up at the top, that's called your threshold bar, that little blue thing that appears at the top, which is a handy term to know for other things we're not gonna get to today. But as you slide it, you see it affects more and more of your object,
Yeah.
okay? So that is pretty fun.
Where it says under motion blur, it says layer, and then next to that, it says pencil. Is
Yep.
that something?
Let's stick with layer for now. Actually, let's go into layer 2, because we'll go into the one that's not alpha locked, and we'll see this a little bit better. And we could even do perspective blur. Well, let's not get into perspective blur today. That's a little much. But we'll go into motion blur, layer, and again, you slide it. So the one that's not alpha locked, you're really going to see it. It basically is like it's splitting in half. Like it's moving through space away from itself. You guys see that? It looks almost like an egg dividing.
Mhm. Or cell divided.
Yeah. Yeah, like a cell dividing, exactly. So that's pretty fun. And then, so let's reset that so it gets back to its firm shape. And then go all the way down to the bottom to liquefy. Okay. And so now I want you to just kind of play with this a little bit. So push, we'll just kind of warp it a little bit. Twirl, kind of moves it in space. As it goes, it's like a rocket. The longer you, with twirl, the longer that you hold it, the more it'll keep going. And it'll keep moving further out from center, like it's taffy being pulled in a spiral.
Oh, it looks like a bird.
Isn't that fun? And you can hit reset at any point if you want to go back to something more familiar and then try a different thing. Like pinch, again, you hold on it and it's going to shrink it. Expand, when you hold it, it blows it up like a balloon. Reset. So this is just a really fun thing. And the same with all the other things, these sliders, the size slider, the pressure slider, distortion, and momentum, these are going to determine the maximum amount of interaction that it will have with that command. Meaning that if your size is, or your pressure or your distortion, your momentum, the sliders are all the way up to 100, the command that you're giving it, it'll do it the most that it possibly can. If you want it to be really subtle, then you would want your sliders to be on the low side. So like if I've got, you know, twirl left and my sliders are at that level, and I hold down, it moves pretty slowly, but it is twirling it. And if I hit reset and I put all of these things up at full, and then I do the exact same thing, you're going to see that it does a completely different action. Like it makes these if I do twirl left with momentum and distortion and pressure and size all the way up, it makes these crazy spirals. It's pretty much like if you think of it as something that has so much centrifugal force that it's exploding into space, that's kind of what you're telling it to do. So that's a lot of really fun stuff. If you're somebody that is into abstract art, the section, the liquefy area is just tons and tons of fun to I mean, or even if you're somebody who's a figurative artist, but you like to have really crazy backgrounds or textures on your subject's clothing, or, you know, it's some kind of combination of realistic and kind of having a wild hair.
Wow, that's very addictive, isn't
Crystals
it?
are really cool.
It's kind of therapeutic to just make a shape and then just play with it. You know, it's really kind of fun. The last thing that I probably should have mentioned this earlier, but if you wanted to, let's go back into layers. Before we go into layers, go into background color, the picker tool. So you've got your colors, and let's just pick a color that you haven't used yet. Whatever color you want that you haven't used yet. I'm gonna go with a yellow. So once you've got a unique color up in the right-hand corner, go into layers and tap on the background, the background color layer, that white section, tap on that. And then kind of pick a color. I'm sorry, go into the background layer and then just pick a unique color, pretty much.
Yeah.
So and then hit done. And it should, if it doesn't do it, just try again. Just go into the background, tap on it, and then just hit a color on the color wheel. Like on, you see how it changes the whole background.
Mhm.
So if you wanted to wear, I mean, I know
back
for
to
me,
60.
there you go. Yep. So I know for me, I really like to work on a toned background, whether, you know, like even when I'm drawing with, you know, charcoals or pastels, I like to have like a tinted paper. So this is a nice way to remove some of that white paper fear for me anyway. It feels a little more inspiring sometimes. So if you're ever looking at a sheet and you're like, I just don't know where to go with this, maybe try changing your background color to emulate your mood and see where it goes. Cool. All right. Okay, so I think that is pretty much everything I wanted to get through. So let's see if anybody has any questions, anything you want to revisit before we.
I had a question about the, let's see, it was, let's see, the feather. I'm on feather. I'm on like one of the, let's see. Okay, let's go. Now I pushed feather, but I can't, it's not, what should it be on above feather? If
So
to
if
be
you go into feather, so I've got my I'm gonna go to layer 2
yeah,
and bring
but
up
there's
my,
automatic freehand rectangle ellipse. Does it matter if it's on one of those? or-
nope, it doesn't actually. So that's a good place to revisit. So let's create a new layer. Go into your layers.
Well, I just like to do it with one of the ones I have already.
Okay, yeah, then you just select it
Uh-huh.
and you let me see if I remember this. And then you go to freehand,
Mm-hmm.
okay?
Okay.
And you circle the area that you want to feather. So you just draw a circle
Okay, I didn't
around
know
it,
that. That's
okay.
what I missed. Okay.
Okay?
Yeah.
And then now that that's there, now you could remove everything around it. You could, one second. Yes. You can feather it, you can copy and paste it. So if you wanted to make this, you like this shape and you wanted to do more of them, you can copy and paste them and it's gonna put it on its own layer. So if you hit the copy paste thing after you have something selected, and then you go into the layers, you'll see it'll say from selection, and it's made an exact duplicate of the of whatever you
I don't know,
select.
once you circle it, it's just not showing me an effect. I don't,
Let me try.
you circle it and then you put your pen on it and that should make it feather?
You have to do the slider. So down below it.
Uh-huh.
Okay, hold on. I had color fill thing on, so it messed it up. But so make sure that none of the other things are on. Color fill, you know, so you're on freehand.
Right.
Okay. And now you tap feather
Mm-hmm.
and oops. And then as you do that, it's feathering. Yeah, this is, let me.
You're supposed to circle it though, or not?
Yeah, yeah, I think so. Hold on. Let me try. Let's just for
Start a new one.
practice sakes, let's make a new layer. Let's go into the freehand selection
The cursor is
and
hidden.
just, you know, make a shape.
Show. In the layers, next to the end, there's a box. Should the box be checked or unchecked?
Checked. So if it's checked, you'll see it. If it's unchecked, it'll disappear.
Oh, okay.
So that's showing or hidden layers.
Okay.
Okay.
Jennifer, is
Yeah.
there a way to ever flip your layers? Because like as they're stacked,
Mm-hmm.
you decide like, oh, I wish layer 1 was actually sitting on top of layer 5.
Yep.
Do you just rename them as?
Nope. you drag them. So let's, let me put them on top of one another so you can see it. Okay, so you see that I've got one on top of another there. So I'm going to take layer 1, which is behind right now.
Mhm.
I'm gonna put my finger on it. I'm gonna tap and hold. So it makes it a little bit, it makes it pop a little bit, and then drag it all the way to the top of the layers box. Make sure you don't, and as like we were talking about before, make sure you don't drop it on another layer because that'll group it. Drop it all the way on the top, and now it brings that layer to the front.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, with the feather, you know, I'm in freehand. I have a new shape. I
Okay.
go to feather, it's just not staying on. It's showing amount and the amount,
All
but
right.
it's not letting me do anything with it.
All right.
on.
So if I go in there, I've got color filled right now. I'm just gonna try to emulate kind of what you're doing here. Hold on 1 second. Okay. All right, so I can do it with ellipse. I'm not sure why the freehand one is being a little finicky. Let me just see if I can figure this out and explain it. Oh, okay, that's what it is. So you need to, so let me clear. So create your shape. You know, I'm
Right.
gonna make a thing. I've got color fill highlighted so that it's going, so you'll be able to see it when it does something. You see how when you created your shape, you get back to your starting point and there's a little circle, like a little white circle. Tap on the little white circle and it should actually create a shape. So it should fill that area.
Mhm.
Okay. And then you can go into feather and you can use the slider. You drag that slider to the right to feather the object more and more and more. Is that working?
Nope, it's just when the feather's not staying on, the light for feather is not staying on when I do it for some reason. But I don't
See that?
I just have it on freehand.
That
on
off.
feather.
So that's layer 3.
Oh, well, I'll figure it out eventually.
Yeah, go ahead.
Jennifer, Rebecca, so I know we're running out of time, but I was wondering if you could just maybe take a few minutes without maybe a lot of detailed information, just show the class the layers of Grotto, just so we can see.
Absolutely.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
I was actually just thinking that myself, so you read my mind. So Grotto, the piece that you guys saw on the e-blast and stuff, this guy here. So when I created him, let me show you, I'm just gonna play for you a little video of how it came together. Here, so this is again, this is the Procreate video coming back. So the first thing I did was I had a pencil drawing and I took a photo of it and I scanned it in and I imported a photo into the Procreate file. So then I created a layer on top of it and I traced my drawing. There are ways to do it so that you can just use the information there, but I decided to draw it again. So now you can see that I'm working through it. I'm bringing in information. I'm bringing in source reference material and I'm changing the tentacles and I'm moving them around. So this is one layer where that's my kid getting a hold of the iPad is where it goes all crazy. So you'll see that it's that I did all the outlines on one layer. So now I created a second layer that's behind my outlines and I filled it in with that color. And then on that one color layer, I went and I added highlights and then I added shadows and then textures. And then I changed the background color. And I started bringing in photos that I was going to adapt for the background. And I started blending them together, erasing certain areas so that you can see them interact. Wow. I made my background into one layer. And then on top of everything, I created a layer that was black but low opacity to create shade, like shadow. And then I started erasing it in select areas to allow the brightness to show through. And then once all that, so it's as if the light is, you know, being affected by the objects coming in from above. And I played with the all of the layer options on my color layer to see if I could get a more dramatic effect. I added bubbles by erasing that shadow layer. I added more texture.
So do you remember how many layers this piece actually involved?
I'm going to bring it up right now so you can actually see it. So in the layers of this, right now I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Right now I have 7, because with this particular project, you may recall that I talked about the size of your piece is going to dictate how many layers you're going to max out at. So for this piece is actually a trial run for I'm working on a children's book series, and so this is one of the pieces that is going to get reused for that, and I wanted to be able to print it out potentially really big, like poster size. So this particular canvas is actually gigantic. It's like 5,000 by 4,000 pixels. So I'm limited to 7 layers. If I was doing this smaller, then I would be able to do more like 15, 20 layers. What I ended up having to do is, as I brought in reference material, when I was maxed out at 7 layers, I would have to actually delete a layer that I no longer needed. Now, if you were doing something at a lower resolution, you wouldn't have that constraint. You'd have more like 20, 30 layers. You could bring in info after info. You could do layer after layer. So I'm capped at 7 layers because of the gigantic size of this file, but you wouldn't necessarily have that constraint. So all of my layers here, I'll show you if I take them away. I'm going to turn off the background. I'm sorry, the background image. So you can see that even without the photo composites in the background, there's still a fair amount of information. And if I turn off the shadow overlay, that's what it looks like without those bubbles and the highlights being erased out. That was the last stage.
I mean, the texture of the skin is really amazing.
Thank you.
So I was just wondering, do you remember what elements you used to get that textural quality of the skin?
I do. So on my color layer here, so I turned off all the other layers. This is one layer, my color layer. And the brush that I used was the water layer under elements. And depending on how big or how small your brush is, it'll affect things in different ways. So like this little section right as it starts to sweep down, where you can see that it's kind of tiny squiggles, my brush was small in that section.
Okay.
But over here, kind of in the shadows, I had the brush larger and with less opacity for that. So you can use the same brush in a multitude of ways. And for making the shadows and brightness on this, I had my eyedropper tool. So I had this base color, and I went into the values section of my color picker. And for the shadows, I just brought down my darkness and sometimes increased the saturation a little bit to make sure that I didn't lose the tonality. And then for the highlights, I did exactly the opposite. So I went back to I color pickered my base color, and then I increased the brightness and sometimes reduce the saturation to increase the contrast. Wow. And then just went back over it. So that's pretty much that.
Thank you.
Yeah, and then the different layer, by the way, the different layers, so my outline, I actually have this on, I don't have this on, you can see if I put it in normal mode, it's kind of hard to see. You lose some of that crispness because there's just so much going on. So I have it in, which mode did I have it in? You see, just going through the modes, it looks, you know, it's got some really fun stuff. But if so I have it in that mode so as to increase the contrast between it and the background. What mode was that I had it in?
Jennifer, do you ever bother writing down that hexadecimal number for your color, or do you find it's not really necessary because you can always eyedrop it?
I haven't needed to.
Okay.
The only time that I would find that the hexadecimal information is useful is if you're trying to match a particular Pantone color.
Okay.
You know, if you have like an advertising application and you needed it to be the right color, then that would come in real handy for that. But I haven't needed to write it down for this. The other thing actually, so if you wanted to save a color, let's just go into the color picker and you go into palettes. You see that I've got, and you know, just what I've got a free one here, but you can make a new palette. So if you're working on something, you go create new palette. And then whatever color is in the color picker, sorry, you just tap on this blank palette and it'll save it for you. Okay, so if I wanted to, you know, create an entire palette based on this piece and how it's going, I can just go through an eyedropper, drop it in, you know, eyedropper, put it in, so that you can create an entire palette. These two right here below it in the palette section are palettes from image. If you have like a painting that, you know, like you've got a drawing that you really like, but you wanted to play around with it and it's already, you can import it into here. Let me just go over that really fast. We're pretty much out of time, but the way that, so when you create a file, let me just go into this one. You've got an empty file. You want to bring in a drawing that you've already done. You go into the actions section in the top left-hand corner. It looks like a wrench. Okay. And you tap the add button. And then you say insert a photo. And it'll bring you up to your photo gallery. You can tap a photo and bring it in. Okay. That's
If you wanted to outline your beautiful child, what would be your best tool to, like, if you want to outline it because you want to make a layer just of his face and not the rest of it, you know what I mean? Like a cut and paste.
Right. Okay. So if I wanted to do that, I would create a new layer. This is something that this is the grapes just all turned off. So this is stuff that you wouldn't see in there. So if I wanted to do that, I would make sure that I have layers available, because when you cut and paste, it's going to create a new layer. So again, with the constraints, if you're going to be maxed out, it's going to be hard to do. So if I'm on my inserted image layer, you see that the photo is the one that's picked up. And I wanted to isolate his face. I wanted to put his face on a separate layer. Then I would go to the selection tool, the little ribbon.
Right.
I would have freehand. I would have color fill turned off because I don't want to fill in the section. I want to copy it. And now I'm going to circle around his cute little head.
Right. And then you get the ants, right?
And then, yep.
Okay.
And then I hit the, it went away real quick, and then I get the copy paste.
Oh, there it is. Okay.
Yep. And so it made a new layer from selection. So there it's just his face. Okay. One more thing that I just want to mention real quick before we go is that so we talked about the sizing and selection and deselection stuff. If you wanted to size up multiple layers at a time, because you've got, you know, all these beautiful layers and you wanted to make it a little bit bigger, but you didn't want to have to do one layer at a time. You go to let's say that I'm going to turn him off, but I'm going to turn on my grapes because it'll be a little easier to see. Okay, so we've got the grapes here. Okay, and let's say that I wanted to make this entire cluster of grapes bigger. So I have one layer selected. Now I go to all the other layers and I swipe to the left and it will highlight the next one. So I had layer 4 selected. Now I swipe to left. Now it's also selected layer 7. And I do the same thing, swipe to the right, not swipe to the left. If I swipe to the left, you get the delete, lock, duplicate options. If you swipe to the right, then it'll highlight it blue. So if I do that with all of these layers, and then I go to my transform tool, then when I size it, I didn't grab all of them, but you can kind of get the idea. Now when I size them, it moves the entire group without having to group your layers together. Okay, does that make sense?
Yes.
All right, and then to deselect that, you just go back into your layers and then you tap on the one layer that you want to work on if you don't want to be affecting all of those layers at the same time. Okay. All right, any other questions before we wrap up?
Jennifer? Oh,
Yeah.
sorry. I have a question of something dumb that I did when I was playing around with your video, and I'll show you. I just can't figure out what I did to make this happen. I'll pull up my gallery to show you because I reversed the image or something, and it so that it almost disappeared. Okay, so this used to be a dark image on a light background, and I just don't even know what I touched. I don't know if you can see with the reflection. It changed it so that it suddenly something I touched reversed it so that it's light on dark.
It's possible. Now, is that one layer or is that multiple layers?
Let me check. I think it's just a background color. But supposedly the background color right now, for instance, is pink. It's only one layer and a background. Okay. My son thinks he knows. My son is actually coming while I'm talking to you. Yeah. Okay, never mind. He doesn't know.
My guess is that if you go into the layers section,
Yeah.
and you got your layer that you got your image on,
Yeah.
Are you seeing a letter N or are you seeing something else?
I think I just figured it out because I did it invert. I was able to invert it and get it to be normal again.
Okay, great. All right.
But I didn't do it on purpose. I realized with this app, there's so many things that you can just be doing almost like by accident as you're working with it because everything is so easy to do.
Yeah. Yeah, sometimes it's almost too easy.
Right. But thank you. This was so helpful.
Yeah, it's wonderful.
Really amazing you walking us through this. And I love your image.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And I want to say big thank you to Dean and Rebecca and the BGA and everything because for this opportunity and spend this time with you all. I really appreciate it.
Oh, it's exciting. It's been really inspiring. I hope we can
Yes,
do more.
definitely.
I would love to see. I would love to see if you guys work on any pieces after this. I would absolutely be thrilled to see them. So feel free to send them
Oh, that'd be so cool. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Nadine and I had a very brief conversation about maybe at some point in the future, the BGA, we were talking about maybe doing an exhibit of work created on the iPad with Procreate. So,
I would love that. Yeah, that would be fantastic to see that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I hope you'll all be in that too.
Yeah. If anybody wants to send images to the admin, I can post them on social media or whatever if you want to share them.
That would be awesome.
Yeah.
All right.
What I find is so addictive is that thing where you can do an instant replay of everything you've done.
Yeah. For anybody, let me just show that real quick for anybody that
It's
hasn't.
just so fun to watch.
It is.
So satisfying.
So to see that, the video recall, you go into the actions menu, that wrench widget in the top left corner. You tap the triangle, it says video. And if you have time-lapse recording turned on, so it's blue, then it'll be keeping track of everything that you do. And you can hit time-lapse replay and it'll just kind of take you through all of the steps that you've done. And it'll run for the more time that you spend on a piece, the longer this will be. But it is really, really fun to see a piece come together, especially if it's something where you tried some stuff and you weren't really, you were like, nah, that's not a direction that I want to go in, and you go in a completely different direction. Sometimes you forget about that. Like layers in a painting that are hidden underneath, and you had the arm up, but you decided to put it down instead. So going through this, you can kind of take a trip down memory lane. Most of mine have some, you see that like crazy, you know, like textures all over it. Most of mine have at least a few seconds where my 2-year-old gets in here and he's like, I want to do it too. So I have to make a new layer for him so he can just kind of play and, you know, and then, and always, if you're not happy with it, like I said in the video, always undo to the point where you're happy with it before you get out of it, because you can't undo once you get out. Yeah, I love that. The video features are really, really fun. All right, everybody.
Thank you. We
Thank
really
you so
appreciate
much.
it.
Very much. Pleasure. Thank you so much, everybody. So nice to meet you all.